everybody. Happy Tuesday. Happy Power Play Tuesday, that is. Thank y'all so much for joining us today. We are focusing today's topic on retirement readiness. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the contribution limits, as we do have tax filing deadline coming up, but today is the 19th, so in less than a month, April 15th, for you to still be able to get in those 2023 contributions for certain accounts. So we thought it'd be really valuable to bring y'all some information on kind of what type of accounts you can utilize for certain situations, how you can best contribute, or what the maximum amount you can contribute to multiple accounts would be to funnel as much money into your retirement savings as possible. So we're going to kind of assess that here in just a bit. First, we're going to go through some of our more basic information just briefly. So this is the retirement readiness class, and there's a picture of me if my live video wasn't enough, which I know is a bit redundant, but that is that's what we're going to be going over today. So let's see. I want to continue on. Oh, and actually, before we kind of dive into everything, I wanted to note as well, we do have a moderator today on the chat. So Miss Rebecca Parker will be fielding all the questions, getting them up to me. So please ask them throughout the presentation. This can be as interactive as you'd like. We'll absolutely have time for some Q&A at the end. But if you do have questions throughout, and obviously if it pertains to the subject matter, we'll kind of answer those as they come as well. So type your questions in the comments as we go throughout. And real quick, I guess before this is the last thing I'm going to say before we kind of get into the material. As a very quick disclaimer, Quest cannot provide any sort of tax, legal, investment, or deal structuring advice. We cannot endorse any particular type of investment sponsor or service. So please do bear that in mind as we go throughout the webinar, that this purely is for educational purposes. That's what Quest is all about, right? If y'all are not too familiar with Quest, maybe this is the first webinar you've been on, or you recently set up an account, or maybe you're interested in doing that, right? We are very education focused. So we try to provide as much as we can in that sense, but we're not ever soliciting advice, right? So for those that are not familiar with us, right, you maybe just recently heard about Quest. I'd like to give you a little bit of background on us as well. So we are located primarily in Texas. I'm here at our corporate office in Houston, and we have satellite offices in Austin and Dallas as well. As far as the size of our company, we've got over 20,000 active clients currently. It's probably closer to 24, 25 to be specific, and just reached the $3 billion in assets under administration. That was a really big achievement for us. We did that, I guess, really the very beginning of this year, maybe the end of 23, but a big milestone for Quest. We were extremely excited about that. We do pride ourselves not in just our education, but also our world famous customer service. So if you were to hop off the webinar right now, give us a call, you actually would talk to a live representative immediately. You wouldn't get any kind of automated phone system. So that's something that we take a lot of pride in, and people seem to really like, especially in today's day and age where sometimes that's a little hard. We have just over 120 highly trained employees. Everybody here at Quest has to go through what we call a new hire process, a month and a half long period where they learn about the different IRA accounts, certain types of investments, how self-direction works. Okay, so we really do try to instill these values and teachings into our employees as well. And the last thing here are those CISPs, one of which I am. There's probably 35 now. That's a little outdated. But that stands for Certified IRA Services Professional. It's about a week-long course that you take to basically be eligible and knowledgeable enough to actually sit for the CISP exam. And then it's all capped off with a 3-hour test at the end. So really dives deep into alternative assets and, IRS rules, tax code, regulations, reporting forms, all that kind of stuff that deal in IRAs and specifically with self-direction. So with that being said, just to give you a little bit of background on myself as well, I was actually born and raised here in Houston, Texas. Growing up, my dad worked in the oil field. My mom, she stayed at home with me and my sisters for a while. Eventually got her realtor's license, and she and my dad kind of got involved in real estate investing themselves. So they were clients of Quest actually before I even knew what this company was. And they really taught me a lot. They taught me how successful you can be in real estate investing. They did rehabs for a long time, and recently have been actually managing their own mobile home park. So I certainly learned a lot from them. And as I, kind of grew up, graduated from high school, I went to college at Texas A&M, where I got my degree in agricultural economics and a focus in finance and real estate. While I was there, I also did a minor in financial planning, which is kind of where I where I went after I graduated. So I worked for a few small RIA, registered investment advisors, and doing comprehensive financial planning, right? Tax, legal, investment advice, estate planning, risk management, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of a little bit about my background. You can see my wife there and our little fur baby, Maverick. So just to give you a little background on me. But now let's really get into the meat and potatoes. So this will be, for those of you that have been on our webinars before, if you've seen me teach, one of my colleagues teach about self-direction, this is probably not going to be new information, but I do briefly want to go through a little bit of the basics on self-directed IRAs, the type of accounts we offer, and then we'll dive into the contribution limits for 2023 and 24 and how you can use those best to your advantage. So truly, we use the term self-directed more for marketing purposes. It's really not anything that the IRS recognizes, right? You won't find the term self-directed IRA or self-direction anywhere in the tax code. There truly is no legal distinction between the IRAs that we offer here at Quest and ones you'd find anywhere else, right? Whether that be one of those larger brokerages, custodians, Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, TD Ameritrade, who's now Charles Schwab. There's, a plethora, right, of those custodians out there who people are pretty familiar with. And pick one. The IRA legally is not going to be any different if you open it there or open it at Quest. What makes a difference is the custodial investment option. So what we allow for. Quest doesn't do anything on the public side. Everything that we handle, all the assets that we hold for our clients are alternative private-based investments. On the flip side of that, your more traditional assets, which is what you would normally go to a Fidelity or Merrill Lynch for, would be like, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, things like that, CDs. There's quite a few, but those are the more traditional or public investments that a lot of people are more familiar with. And those are the things that we don't handle. We operate on the opposite side of the investment spectrum from that. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of IRAs and plans that Quest offers that we self-direct. So we break this down into 3 different categories: personal plans, employer plans, and specialty plans. The personal are going to be your most common traditional and Roth IRAs. These are the ones that people typically recognize if you are somewhat familiar with employer plans. And I know it says Roth RA there. It's just a typo. It should say Roth IRA, but traditional and Roths. And this is really a great place to kind of describe the different types of tax benefits between most all retirement or tax shelter plans. Okay, so traditional IRAs are what we refer to as pre-tax accounts. This means, and pre-tax, tax deferred, those are kind of used interchangeably. But this means that the money you're contributing, that you're putting into that plan, is pre-tax, right? So you contribute dollars into there. Typically, you're going to get a tax deduction for that. And it allows the money to grow tax deferred. So if I contribute an initial $7,000, let's say, and grow that money over the course of, I don't know, 10 years to 70,000, right? I'm able to 10x my initial contribution. That 63,000 of growth is, well, really all of it. I mean, but especially the growth in particular, none of it gets taxed as it's growing in the IRA. Eventually, all of that money, because it is pre-tax dollars, is going to be taxed to me, but not until I actually withdraw the money from the account. Normally, this happens during retirement. Once you actually start needing this money for your living expenses, you're no longer in your working years. That's when you can start drawing from these IRAs and these retirement plans, right? So the traditional IRA, pre-tax contributions, grows tax deferred. The Roth IRA is going to be essentially the opposite in terms of the taxation or tax status of the money going in. So we recognize these as post-tax accounts where you've already paid taxes on that money, you contribute it into a Roth IRA. The advantage of paying the tax upfront as opposed to down the line, because even like with a traditional IRA, the whole point is you push taxes off into the future. When you're retired, you no longer have, at least maybe no salary, certainly not as big of a salary. So your marginal tax bracket is much lower, right? Less taxation at that point. While you're contributing to the Roth and being taxed on that money during your working years, most likely the taxation is going to be more. The advantage, though, of doing this is now you can grow that money potentially tax-free. And the reason I say potentially is because they're, technically speaking, Roth IRAs are tax-deferred accounts. The taxes are deferred on all of the growth. But as long as you meet a couple of qualifications in the Roth IRA, you can take tax-free distributions of the entire plan. That be the contributions and the growth or the investment return on your assets. So what do those contributions look like? There are really two qualifications you have to meet. To satisfy the first one, you have to have had the Roth IRA open and funded for 5 years. Okay, so it's not just enough to set up the account. You have to make a contribution into the plan. It doesn't have to be in any particular amount. It could be the full contribution amount, the maximum. It could be $10, $100, right? Whatever you want to do to initially fund that Roth and start that 5-year clock. So the Roth IRA has to be opened and funded for 5 years. The second, which there are a few different options on, most common being that you have attained age 59 and a half. So you're not having to jump through a ton of crazy hoops, right, just to take these tax-free distributions. You've had the Roth IRA open and funded for 5 years, and you are 59 and a half. You can now take out all contribution and growth in that Roth completely tax-free. There are some other, I guess, exceptions to that, what they call the 59 and a half rule. So might be like a disability. You may be able to take funds out tax and penalty free if you qualify as a first-time home buyer, sometimes for college and medical expenses, maybe even to a beneficiary or an estate upon your passing. Those are all scenarios that would also satisfy that same rule as reaching age 59 and a half. So traditional and Roth IRAs, all right, those are the personal plans. Remember, pre-tax versus post-tax growth, okay? Employer plans, these we'll dive into more here in just a little bit, but the SEP IRA, Simple IRA, and Solo 401k. These are our plans that we are typically, I guess, not only most attractive, but also that you have to have some kind of, typically a business, or you're a solo entrepreneur, self-employed person to qualify for one of these. They are employer-sponsored plans. And like I said, we'll talk about the different contribution limits and some of the qualifications for each of those in just a minute. And then with our specialty plans, the HSA and Coverdell ESA savings account. Question here from Mikey. Do you touch on Canadian RRSP? Mikey, unfortunately not. There's really not any way to actually use funds from a Canadian retirement plan over here on the state side. So kind of a bit of a bummer there. It's a question we get fairly often. I wish that there was something more we could do there, but yeah, unfortunately the RRSP just doesn't qualify for a self-directed IRA plan in the United States. Am I missing any other questions, Rebecca, before I keep going? No, I think we're good. Oh, why a primer? I think I answered that one. I think that was in regards to the qualifications for tax-free distributions from a Roth. Awesome. Okay. So employer plans we'll get to here in just a bit. Specialty plans. These we'll also talk about more in a little bit. But the health savings account and education savings account for children as well are plans that we do offer that you can self-direct. Okay, now let's get into the meat and potatoes of today. Let's talk about the contributions at the deadline. So the nice thing about this time of the year, from January 1st to typically April 15th, or whenever tax filing deadline might be, anyone who has not made 2023 or 2024 contributions yet can actually set up an account right now and basically make double the amount of contributions. So 2023 contributions are still open, are still applicable until April 15th. Okay, for these personal plans, traditional, Roth, HSAs, ESAs. You can still make contributions for last year into them. And you can also double up right now or later this year or up until April 15th of 2025, your contributions for the current year, for the 2024 tax year. So let's take a look at what these contribution limits are. We're going to start with the personal plans. Traditional and Roth IRA are the exact same. So it's this one's not very confusing. It was $6,500 in 2023. This year they increased it a little bit, so now it's up to $7,000 for 2024. Anybody over the age of 50 years or older by the end of the year. So maybe you're 49 years old right now, but you're turning 50 in June or September, or December, whatever it is. As long as you meet that requirement before the end of the year, you are eligible for a catch-up contribution of $1,000, and that hasn't changed. So $1,000 is the catch-up, not mustard. I love that joke. I heard somebody say that one time. Catch-up, not mustard contribution for both years, for 23 and for 2024. So basically, for somebody who is 50 years or older, even starting last year, you'd be able to contribute $7,500 and $8,000 for this year, for a total of $15,500 as an initial contribution to a traditional or Roth IRA. Now, please take note of that little asterisk right there. Traditional and Roth IRA contributions are cumulative. What does this mean? I cannot contribute for myself, somebody who's younger than 50 years old. If I wanted to make a 2024 contribution to either a traditional or Roth, it would truly be just that, one or the other. I mean, I guess it could be both, but it wouldn't be $7,000 into each. I can put $7,000 into the traditional. I can put $7,000 into the Roth. Maybe I could even do $3,500 into both of them if I wanted to, right? It just cannot, surpass that $7,000 threshold between the cumulative contributions of the two plans. So personal plan contributions are cumulative. For our employer plans, so let's talk about each one of these a little bit, starting with the SEP IRA. You can see there's obviously a lot more that goes into contributions into a plan like this, right? When it comes to employee versus employer contributions and the percentage of compensation, how much is your self-employed income? Are there catch-up contributions? Some plans there are, some plans there aren't. So really when it comes to these employer plans, certainly, feel free to give us a call and we'd be happy to have a discussion on maybe what potential options you have. And then ultimately, a CPA, your tax professional is a great resource in determining what plan might be best for you and calculating those contribution limits as well. If I start collecting Social Security, can I still fund a Roth IRA? So yeah, Robert, that's actually a good question. Social Security won't necessarily have an impact on your ability to contribute to a Roth IRA. What does, if you're kind of at that age, is actually having qualified income or earned income for the Roth IRA contribution. So let's take a look at this really quick. If I want to make a $7,000 contribution for 2024 into my Roth IRA, that means that I have to have at least $7,000 of earned income on my W-2, my Schedule C, whatever it is, whatever I'm making my salary on. Tax-wise, I just have to show that I've got that much in earned income to actually be able to make the contribution. So Social Security doesn't necessarily have an impact. You just have to have enough earned income to satisfy that. Great question, though. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else? All right. Starting with the SEP IRA, let's take a look at what the difference in contributions are between last year and this year. First of all, you're probably going to notice that there's no employee contributions. For a SEP, everything comes from the employer side. Into one of these plans, you can contribute up to, or the employer can, I guess, up to 25% of your compensation, or $66,000, whichever is lesser, right? So if I make $1 million, I can't contribute $250,000 into that SEP. It's going to be capped out at 66. So it's the lesser of 25% or $66,000. There's no catch-up contribution with the SEP IRA. That hasn't changed from 2023 or 2024. The limits, the employee versus employer contributions haven't changed. The only thing that has changed is the maximum amount that can be put in that SEP, which is increased by $3,000 up to $69,000 there in 2024, as y'all can see. The simple IRA, this one also is, again, employer sponsored. You can, and what's a little bit more unique about this plan is it can sustain a business that has employees. We'll talk about why the solo 401k is different. So the SEP and simple IRA are great for solo entrepreneurs or even for small businesses. You can make contributions on behalf of your other employees if you have any as well, for anybody that operates or runs their own company. So for this one, y'all can see here, 2023 employee contributions were up to $15,500 with a $3,500 catch-up contribution. Then the employer could also, on their side of things, either make a 3% elective or a 2% non-elective contribution. So this was based off what the employer wanted to do. They could do 3% elective for all employees or 2% elective for all employees. They're not allowed to discriminate between one or the other, right? So that means it could be up to a 3% match, that 3% elective contribution, or a 3% non-elective, right? So it's not based on what the employee contributes. Either you do 2% for everybody or 1% for everybody, or maybe not necessarily any at all. What it means by non-elective is if you do it for one person, you have to do it for the rest. Everybody has to be equal, right? 2024, when it comes to the employer contributions, much the same, other than the income limit increased a little bit. So it can be 3% elective or 2% non-elective, now up to $345,000 as opposed to just $330,000. The employee limit changed a little bit as well. It increased from $15,500 as a base contribution limit, now up to $16,000. Okay. And with the solo 401k, very similar to, as far as the employer side goes, to it's when I say very similar, I mean exactly the same, to the CISP IRA plan, up to 25% of compensation, or the lesser of $66,000 for 2023 or $69,000 for 2024. What is unique about the solo 401k plan, aside from the qualifications, this is the plan where you cannot have any full-time employees. Partners are okay. So maybe if you and your spouse operate a business together, so long as you're both partners in that, in the company, in that entity, that's kosher. And then the nice thing as compared to SEPs is that you can contribute both on the employee and the employer side. So this one is your typical 401k contribution. Last year it was $22,500 with a $7,500 catch-up contribution, right? So up to $30,000 from the employee side. Now it's increased a little bit, so it's up to $31,500. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I think I misspoke there. $30,500 from the employee side. Okay. Let's see, what questions do we have here before I continue? Yeah, so technically that would work as, yeah, I mean, if they're just 1099 subcontractors, they're not considered full-time employees, they're not technically on like a W-2 payroll, then yes, you should be eligible, Kushal, for a contribution to a SEP IRA just for yourself. You might also qualify for a solo 401k as well at that point. Great question. Okay, and the last one here are the specialty plans. The Coverdell ESA, which didn't change at all, $2,000 per child per year to go towards their education expenses. And then the health savings account, which did change. Actually, this is one of the largest increase in contributions for the HSA that we've seen in a while. And the really nice thing about the HSA, which we'll get into here in a little bit, is that it really has, we refer to this account as the best of both worlds, because you can put pre-tax contributions into the plan. So contribute money, you could qualify for a tax deduction. And as long as you're using those funds to go towards qualified medical expenses, you can actually take the money out, all of it, tax-free as well. So we're talking about money that's not getting taxed on the front end nor the back end, which is an incredible advantage that you really don't see with any other type of plan. So HSAs are incredibly advantageous for that reason. There are two types of HSA plans, a self-only HSA and then a family HSA, right, for you and your spouse and your kids. There are catch-up contributions for the HSA as well. That doesn't apply to the ESA, but notice the catch-ups for the HSA happen at age 55, whereas with all of our other plans, they happen at 50 years old, at least the plans that have them, right? 50 years old for the simple, 50 years old for the solo 401k, 50 years old for both the traditional and the Roth as well. So the HSA is the only one that catch-up contributions are done at 55 or older. And it would apply the same way. As long as you're turning 55 before the end of the year, you would qualify for that catch-up. Okay. So a few things here before we get into a case study and look at, we have an example of Rosie the realtor who will actually be able to kind of show us all the different types of accounts she could use between her and her family and the potential contribution amounts to that. Kushal said, if I work as a W-2 employee and have a business with 1099 income, can I contribute to the employer-sponsored 401k and to my business SEP IRA? That actually is a really good question as well. And the answer is yes, to some extent. Now, because you are technically an employee of each. You cannot contribute the employee portion to both business or both working plans, both business sponsored plans. With the SEP IRA, it doesn't matter that much because there is no employee contribution. But yes, technically, if you meet the qualifications to operate those plans through multiple companies, you can contribute on both sides. It's a very good question. And a really common strategy for somebody who does have, like your typical 9-to-5 job, W-2 income, and maybe a smaller side business where they kind of do something as well. So benefits when it comes to self-direction, we're going to talk about a few of these things for some of our more, novice or newbies that have not seen one of these presentations before about our IRA accounts. The three types of benefits that we typically describe are the diversification, right? Taking your money out of the stock market, it's less affected by that volatility, and putting it in some more tangible assets, right? Land or real estate, it's different things like that. Lending money on real estate securely. There's a ton of different ways that we'll talk about in just a moment. The tax savings, which is what we just went through, is obviously the biggest one. This is the whole reason why we oftentimes have real estate investors, as of current, coming to Quest to set up an account. They could do these investments one way or the other, but they want the tax benefits through a self-directed IRA. And then the last one is investing in what you know best. So for people who are either experienced investors or maybe you're just starting off and you're here to learn, you're going to get that experience, you're going to get that education, and investing in what you know best and something that you have control over is really a big benefit. You obviously are, for most people, I guess, you don't have the ability to affect the financials of said Fortune 500 company that your 401k is invested into, or that you have as a part of some ETF or mutual fund, right? You do, however, have the ability to decide what the rehab budget is going to be and how you want to decorate or stage a house for sale through your IRA. Those are things that you can control and affect a lot more easily, right? So, aside from that, the other, kind of after talking about all of the different advantages, the tax benefits, the like investing in what you know best, the different types of assets that you can purchase through a self-directed IRA, there are some restrictions that we have to discuss as well. So when it comes to IRAs, self-directed IRAs in particular, as we're probably a little bit more exposed to this just based on the type of assets that we hold. There are certain individuals who cannot actually interact or enter into transactions with your IRA, otherwise deeming it prohibited. So who are these disqualified people? We kind of do, have verbiage for it. There's a little dance that Nathan, if y'all have ever seen our president or even Quincy do, it includes you as the IRA account holder, your spouse, your lineal ascendants, descendants, as well as their spouses, and any entity that those people own, operate, manage, or are highly compensated by. So I'm not going to get up and do the whole dance. I'm certainly not as good at it as Nathan is, but that's the list of who would be considered disqualified from entering into these certain types of transactions with your IRA. What are those transactions? Any kind of buy, sell, trade, a loan, or extension of services or benefit with the IRA, whether it be the IRA to the disqualified person or vice versa. So what this means is you and your spouse, anybody up and down the family tree, and the entities or companies that they're associated with cannot enter into those kind of transactions. And then the last one here are the investment restrictions, which are really just two things. I didn't even include verbiage for it. Life insurance contracts, your self-directed IRA cannot invest into. And the second is collectibles. So vintage playing cards, vintage cars, those could be considered collectibles, jewelry, artwork, all things like that. Typically things that it's kind of hard to actually put a valuation on. So those are the investment restrictions and the 3 different types of restrictions when it comes to IRA accounts. Now let's kind of talk about what you can invest in with your self-directed IRA. We break it down into 3 different groups, and this is kind of how our transactions teams are structured. On the real estate side, you have residential and commercial property, single family, multifamily housing. You can invest into short-term and long-term rentals. You can buy properties at tax auctions. You can buy them subject to other financing. Those are all really popular investment strategies. On the private entity side, investing sometimes into like private company stock, right? We talked about any public stock, publicly traded stock, but smaller held companies or startups you can invest into either as an equity sponsor investor. You can purchase private stock through them. You can have, there's different ways to do it, but those are some of the structures that we see on the entity side. And then with promissory notes, you can also loan your funds out, essentially using your IRA as the bank. So you might strike a deal with another real estate investor in your network who needs money for a project that they're doing. They've got a rehab going on. They need $30,000. You guys come to terms on the length of the loan, the interest rate, and maybe it's going to balloon, right? Maybe they'll make monthly interest and principal payments. Totally up to you. You decide what those terms are going to be. You have Quest kind of help you have the investment done through your IRA account. Okay, so now the last one here before we talk about the different, or I guess that example with Rosie the Realtor that I mentioned, is how do I fund my IRA? Contributions are going to be number one, and this is what this whole class is surrounding, right? The contribution limits and how to be able to really stockpile as much money all at once into an IRA as you can. We're not talking about money from other types of retirement plans. So it's not coming from a 401k. It's not coming from an IRA. These are contributions or money put into the plan straight out of your own pocket. Okay. Second one is a transfer from another IRA. So if you've got IRAs elsewhere, doesn't matter who it's with or what it's invested into. You can always be able to liquidate that and move it to a self-directed IRA with Quest to invest in some more alternative assets. Same way with an old employer plan. I kind of have that highlighted, though it doesn't always have to be an old employer plan or a previous employer plan. Once that 401k, 403b, whatever it is no longer active, you will most definitely have access to that money to be able to roll it over. So that is undoubtedly something that you'll be able to utilize. Now with active plans or current employer plans where you are still working with that company, still actively contributing to that 401k that your company has for you, you may not be able to access the money, at least not in the full amount. And it really just depends on the 401k plan or whatever type of employer plan it is. Some allow for it, some don't. Each one has the ability to kind of set their own rules to an extent. So it really just depends on what the plan laws say, right? That's something you could ask the administrator or somebody who actually has knowledge about the employer plan to find out if the plan may allow for what they call in-service rollovers. Meaning that while you're still in service with the company, you can roll over some of that money to an IRA. And what that, sorry, I'm looking for my water. Oh, well. What that means is even though you haven't had what they call a separation of service, you are still employed, right? Until you retire, switch jobs, quit, whatever it is. You have to be, the plan, I guess, has to allow for those in-service rollovers for you to be able to take any money out at all. And even most of the time, I would say that is pretty rare for them to allow that, especially before age 59 and a half. So something worth looking into, especially if you've got an employer plan that you think could be eligible and you'd like to move some of those funds over, but ultimately you'll have to check with that employer. Okay, so now here is our example of Realtor Rose. Realtor Rose is 51 years old. She only right now has about $200,000 saved for her retirement, but she earns $80,000 of net income per year on her Schedule C, right? So that's her self-employment income. Rose would like to have a retirement income of $60,000 a year, which is 75% of her working income. So her years after working, she expects maybe a slight decrease in spending, not a ton, but $60,000 that she needs every year for the rest of her life to live on. Okay. So in this scenario, we're going to assume a few things. We're going to assume 6% income from her retirement assets. We're not going to pay attention to the effects of inflation. And that Rose needs $1 million in her retirement accounts when she retires in 15 years. So we're going to look at how that might be possible. And then what this would mean, right, assuming those things, 6% growth and needing $1 million in 15 years, it's going to be that Rose's retirement savings must grow at a rate of more than $53,000 a year. Okay. So probably a tough feat ahead of us, especially when we're starting off with just $200,000 in the plan. If we're assuming 6%, that's what, $12,000 a year? Certainly not 53. So this would come from gains from the investments and contributions. So let's take a look at how Rose might be able to do this. Here are the choices that she has. Dying sooner, as morbid as that might sound, that's probably not going to be an option that I would say most anybody would opt for. Working longer, certainly something you can do, not for Realtor Rose. She is pretty stubborn. She wants to retire in 15 years. It's not going to matter whether she's got enough or not. She's hoping that she can save up to that $1 million and have $60,000 a year to live off of, but she's not working any longer. She could rely on Social Security income. I guess, that kind of depends on your perspective, how trusting or safe you feel in Social Security right now. And certainly if it would be enough to really supply what you typically were used to receiving in income during your working years. So the last two here is what Rose is going to focus on. An increase of savings of her retirement contributions and increasing yield from assets is hopefully something she'll be able to achieve as well through these self-directed accounts. So let's start with the traditional and the Roth IRA. Rose can make contributions to a traditional and Roth like we talked about for last year and for this year. And this is going to be between $13,500 and $15,500 depending on your age. When we talked about those catch-up contributions. Let's go back a second though. We already discussed that Rose is 51 years old. Okay, so she's actually going to be able to make catch-up contributions for 2023 and for 2024. So she can set up a traditional or a Roth IRA right now, put in $15,500. Okay. The second thing here is spousal contributions. Rose's spouse can also potentially make these same contributions, even if they don't have earned income of their own. This kind of goes back to whose question was it? Robert's? No. Somebody had the question. Oh, maybe not. Well, regardless, that they can, even if they don't have earned income of their own, as long as their spouse does and they're filing jointly, they actually qualify for what they call a spousal contribution. Let's see, we're doing good here on time. Okay. So potentially $15,500 for both Realtor Rose and for her spouse. So we're talking about $31,000 already into these retirement accounts. The next one here is going to be some of the different employer plan options on top of your personal contributions to a traditional or Roth IRA. So we'll look at the three different options here and kind of try to assess which one might be best. So starting with the SEP IRA, remember, we don't allow any employee contributions into the SEP. So everything is coming from the employer side. So we're going to assume that Rose's net Schedule C earned income is $80,000. And after all of the taxes have been taken out and whatnot, what she is able to contribute into this plan is $14,870. And you'll see that that kind of rings true for most of the employer contributions for here. So SEP IRA, total contribution amount of almost $15,000. The simple IRA, remember there's an employee and employer component. So $16,000 in salary deferral, that should say 2024, I had to update that. $16,000 in salary deferral, another $3,500 in catch-up contributions. She elected for the 3% match. She's going to be able to get a little bit more that way. So $2,165 of her income, for a total of $21,665 for the simple option, right? You're not going to be able to do each one of these for the same business. So that's kind of why we're trying to assess which one might allow for the largest contribution limit. The last one here is the solo 401k. Now, if y'all picked up on it, I kind of already hinted that these, assuming that you qualify, because the qualifications and requirements to be able to set one of these up are certainly a little bit more advanced or more difficult to meet. But assuming that you do meet those, these solo 401ks really have so many different ways that you can contribute with different buckets that these are oftentimes the most advantageous when it comes to contribution limits. So with the solo 401k, Rose can defer $31,500 of her earned income. And that should be, I don't know why I put that one there too, $30,500. So $23,000 from the base employee contribution with an additional $7,500 catch-up contribution into the 401k. Now, Rose as the employer can also make a profit sharing contribution of that almost $15,000 amount for a total of $39,870. So you tell me, what do you think? Which one is going to be the best here? Is it going to be the simple IRA for $18,000, the SEP IRA for almost $15,000, or the solo or individual 401k plan for almost $40,000, right? So that hopefully kind of puts some things into perspective for some of the self-employed people, if there are any on here, if you own your own business. A great way to put back and save some money for retirement and for your IRA investment purposes. So the last thing here, let's talk about the HSA and the ESA. These are certainly not lost, right? Rose might qualify for an HSA. There are a few requirements you have to meet, though. Catch-up contributions are permitted in this plan after age 55, right? We already talked about that. In terms of qualifications, though, you must have a high deductible health plan, and contributions into an HSA are not allowed after you are enrolled in Medicare. So have to have a high deductible health plan. And on that, most of the time, the IRS says that the deductible has to be higher than $16,000. Now, each insurance providers, what they deem to be high deductible is going to be different. So it could be different from Blue Cross Blue Shield as compared to any other healthcare provider. Doesn't matter who it is. It's really based on your plan and what they consider to be high deductible. So most time it's best to ask your agent, ask your company if that's who you get your health insurance through. Look on a statement. Most of the time that'll tell you as well about your deductible. And so potential contribution to an HSA, and then for a Coverdell ESA, she can contribute for all of her children $2,000 per year for each child, right? So what does all this look like if we're putting it all together? We've got $15,500 for Rose's husband's IRA contributions, probably going into a Roth, $15,500 for her Roth IRA contribution, a 401k salary deferral of $30,500, health savings account contribution, assuming, and this is including the catch-up contribution, even though Rose is only 51 years old, for somebody who is over 55. $9,300 a year for a family HSA contribution, including the catch-up. And then for her one solo child, her only sweet baby boy, she can contribute another $2,000 into their ESA. This brings us to a total of $73,800 between 2023 and 2024 contributions. So this doesn't even necessarily include some of the, like with the 401k, we just talked about, and even the HSA, the ESA, those are just 1 year's contributions. I did include both 2023 and 2024 for the Roth IRAs because those are some of the most popular plans to contribute to immediately. But take a look at these. These are just for 1 year. This is just probably done for 2023. They could double this up for 2024 potentially. So assuming, let's assume that just 2023 alone. So we're going to take out another 7,500 from these, or 8,000 from these two right here, the Roth IRA contributions. We're still contributing almost $58,000. So I'm going to assume that that's going to meet her savings need of $53,000 a year, right? That's what she needed to do. So without any investment return, Rose has already been able to, and obviously this is a very, very aggressive retirement savings method, right? But hopefully it shows you a little bit about how this can work. So let's see. For the last thing here, I do have a few events that I want to run through, and then we'll have some time for Q&A here at the end. So this first one is actually a promotion, not an event, but a promotion that Quest has going on right now, what we call Texas Two-Step. If you set up an account before the end of March and fund it, or at the very least kind of initiate the funding through a contribution, a transfer, or a rollover like we talked about, we will credit your account $125 to cover any custodial fees. So open the account before the end of the month, fund it or initiate the funding before the tax filing deadline. So for those of you that are looking to take advantage of those contributions, this is the promotion for you. Highly encourage you to check it out. You can scan that QR code. You can send us an email to either myself, to one of the IRA specialists, and we'd be happy to help you get set up. This one here is a very special webinar that we're having on March 23rd. So actually this upcoming Saturday, that is going to be based on the, millennial investors. So if you're not a millennial, maybe you have kids who are, I would certainly share this with them. That way you can kind of help get them started in the right direction as well. Scan the QR code. It's going to be great. We've got some 3 different panels that will talk about, and some young investors as well, who kind of talk about their journey, their experiences, lessons they learned along the way. So I think we're going to have a lot of great information on there. And for anybody who is new to the investment market, or alternative investments in particular, I highly recommend this. I'll be on there as well, moderating one of the panels, so you'll get to see my beautiful face again. This is actually our next social that we have. So if y'all have ever been to a Quest social before, you know that we do them once a quarter in each of our offices. Austin will be May 2nd. We're going to do one here in Houston on May 7th. And then Dallas will be hosted on May 14th. For this social in particular, we actually partnered with the Wounded Warriors Project to kind of talk about how veterans turned investors had, success, right? And some of their stories in particular, if there are any veterans on the webinar right now, utilizing that TSP money that you have in a self-directed IRA to start investing alternatively with, potentially higher rates of return. So would love to see y'all out there. We'll have food, drinks, networking. Obviously, the education will be a big part, and we hope you make it out there. The last one here is the Quest Expo. Now, I want to actually take a minute. I'm going to pull down my screen, and Mac, if I do this poorly, hopefully you'll just correct me. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the Expo first before we go into this. So the Expo is our biggest event of the year. one of the biggest alternative investment conferences across the country in 2024. We're expecting approximately or even over 1,000 attendees there. We're flying in experts and speakers for panels and presentations from across the country. And there's going to be all kinds of networking and investment sponsors and vendors and potential lenders, borrowers, right? All kinds of people you can talk to and network there. The expo is good for you if you are just getting started, or you have 20 years and 100 properties and 200 transactions worth of experience under your belt, right? It really is for anybody at all experience ranges, because you're going to learn. There will be different breakout rooms, different panels based on kind of where you fall on that line. So with that being said, we want to play you a quick video that kind of talks about the last week.
So we are here because we want to meet as many investors as we possibly can. Quest does a great job at putting people here at the event. This event, I think, is great for first-time borrowers, first-time investors, and experienced investors. This event is great for finding funds that could fit their investment needs. I get a lot of business from the Quest event. I talk to people, I network with people, and it actually becomes business after the event.
Awesome. So hopefully from that, y'all were able to get a glance of what that was, the 2022 Expo. That way, I don't know if you heard me say that in the beginning. That video had already started, but I mean, the Expo, every year we do it, and really we only do it about every other year. So now is a great opportunity. You're here at a great time to kind of take advantage of this. The Expo is one of my favorite things that I look forward to. I mean, just from connecting with the people, the attendees, the sponsors, the speakers, the experts, right? Just getting to kind of learn from them and sort of just pick their brain is absolutely unbeatable, in my opinion. So it's going to be a weekend-long event, June 27th through 29th. We're all going to have a great time. You probably saw the casino night that we did back in 2022. This year's theme is actually going to be carnival. And we call it, I think it's like the Saturday evening will be the party. Check it out. Y'all can scan that QR code. Rebecca posted a link and a coupon code that you can actually use, which is just my name in all caps, to save 20%. So take advantage of this while you can. This promotion is not running forever, and we'd love to have you there in Las Colinas with us. It's 10 minutes, 15 minutes north of Fort Worth, about 10 minutes from the airport there in Loveland. So check it out. We hope you guys can make it. That is about all that I have. And Rebecca, I don't think I saw any other questions come through, but if there is anything else, y'all, go ahead and type it in the chat now. Otherwise, I know we're getting close to closing time here. Please feel free to take down my contact information. You can scan that QR code to schedule a consultation with me. Otherwise, my email is just my name, colin.taylor@questtrust.com. You can also email us at IRA Specialists, plural with an S at the end, IRA Specialists @questtrust.com for any more information. So happy Tuesday again to everybody. We hope you all enjoy the rest of your week. And I certainly hope that you were able to take away a lot of great information from this. So enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you all so much for joining, and we hope to see you next time. And that being said, we'll kind of wrap this up. Thank you so much, everyone.